The massive ship appeared above Earth without warning. It was 3 times larger than any city, blocking out the sun across half of Korea. People stopped in the streets, staring upward with phones raised. Within minutes, every government on the planet went into emergency mode. Ji-won stood in the Seoul research facility, her hand shaking as she watched the monitors. For 3 years, she had been sending signals into space using the experimental communication device her team built. They had discovered something strange about quantum particles, a way to make them talk to each other across impossible distances. The scientific community called her crazy. The military gave her funding anyway, just in case. Now something had answered. "They're responding to our frequency," Mina said from across the room, her fingers dancing over the translation algorithms. "The pattern is too organized to be natural. This is language." Hyun-woo entered the command center, his military uniform crisp despite the chaos. He had been pulled from a meeting with the Joint Chiefs. "What do we know?" "They found us because of our signals," Ji-won explained, pulling up data on the main screen. "Our quantum communication punched through something they call the barrier layer, according to their message. No species has ever done that without achieving space travel first. Is that good or bad?" Hyun-woo asked. "Unknown," Mina replied, still working on the translation. "But they're asking permission to land. They say they're from something called the Galactic Council." The translation improved over the next 6 hours. The aliens were polite but formal. They spoke like diplomats reading from a script. They wanted to meet at a neutral location to discuss Earth's application for galactic citizenship. The way they phrased it made it sound like humanity had filed paperwork without knowing. 3 days later, the landing happened in a carefully prepared field outside Seoul, Kiwon. Hyun-woo and Mina stood with 24 other humans, representing Earth's governments and scientific institutions. They wore their best clothes and tried not to look terrified. The alien ship was smaller than the one in orbit, but still impressive. When the door opened, 6 beings walked out. They were humanoid, but clearly not human. Their leader was tall, with blue-gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on his face. He wore robes that seemed to shift colors. "I am Ambassador Velter of the Korean Empire," he announced in perfect Korean, though his mouth movements didn't match the words. A translator device, Ji-won realized. "I speak for the Galactic Council in this sector." Hyun-woo stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth. We're honored by your presence." Velther's expression was hard to read with 4 eyes, but his tone carried clear condescension. "Yes, I'm sure you are. Your world has caused quite a disruption with your crude attempts at faster-than-light communication." Crude felt her jaw tighten. Crude? Her team had revolutionized physics. "Your species has developed theoretical knowledge beyond your technological level," Velthar continued. "This is unusual, but not unprecedented. The Council has protocols for such situations. You will be evaluated to determine if humanity deserves a place in galactic civilization." "Deserves?" Mina whispered to Ji-won. "We didn't apply for anything." Velthar gestured, and one of his assistants projected a hologram into the air. It showed a complex document written in dozens of languages, including several Earth languages. "These are the standard requirements. All species must prove themselves worthy through trials of military strategy, technological innovation, and cultural wisdom. Most species fail. Those who pass are granted limited membership and access to galactic markets and knowledge. And those who fail?" Hyun-woo asked carefully. "Are quarantined until they develop sufficiently," Velthar said. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Or they destroy themselves first. Primitive species often do." Casual way he said it made Ji-won's blood run cold. This wasn't a friendly welcome. This was an inspection. Over the next week, the aliens set up a diplomatic station. More ships arrived, carrying representatives from other council species. Most treated humans like curiosities or children. They toured human facilities, asked condescending questions, and took samples of everything. Guan found herself giving the same presentation about her. Quantum communication device 6 different times to 6 different aliens who all looked bored. One alien was different. Kathon was a researcher from a species called the Mirathi. She had large eyes that actually showed interest when Jiwan explained the mathematics behind the quantum breakthrough. Your approach ignores the candor principle, Kathon said, studying the equations. Every species learns that principle in basic academy training. It's considered fundamental law. We never heard of it, Jiwan admitted. We approach the problem from first principles using our own mathematical framework. Kathon's eyes widened. And it worked? You're talking to me across 3 light-years of space, Jiwan said. Yes, it worked. Remarkable, Kathon whispered. Don't tell the others I said this, but humanity might be the first species in 1,000 years to genuinely surprise the Council. That conversation stuck with Jiwan that night. She gathered with Hyunwoo and Mina in a secure room. Something's wrong, Hyunwoo said. I've been reviewing the trial records they provided. Every species that attempts them either barely passes or fails completely. There's no middle ground. And the ones that fail? We can't find any records of them after that. I've been analyzing the linguistic patterns in their diplomatic communications. They're using threat conditioning language, phrases designed to make us feel inferior and dependent on their approval. They don't want us to pass, Jiwan said suddenly, the pieces clicking together. Or they want us to pass in a very specific way that keeps us subordinate. That's a serious accusation, Hyunwoo warned. Kathon told me we're the first species to surprise them in 1,000 years, Kyuan continued. What if the trials aren't really tests? What if they're just a system to maintain control? Before they could discuss further, an alert came through. Velthor was calling an assembly. All Earth representatives were required to attend. The meeting hall was full of aliens and nervous humans. Velthar stood at the center, his robes shifting through proud colors. Humanity has been evaluated, he announced. The Council has decided you are sufficiently developed to attempt the trials. You have 6 months to prepare. The first trial will test your military strategy against a standard scenario. The second will require you to solve a technological problem that has stumped many species. The third will evaluate your cultural wisdom and moral reasoning. He paused, his 4 eyes scanning the crowd. I should inform you that in the last 500 years, only 3 species have passed all 3 trials. 27 species have failed. We expect humanity will join the latter group. But the Council believes in giving every species a fair chance. The way he said fair made it sound like anything but. As the meeting dispersed, Jiwan caught Hyunwoo's eye. He nodded slightly. They were thinking the same thing. If humanity was going to survive this, they couldn't play by the Council's rules. They would need to do something the galaxy had never seen before. They would need to be human. The trial parameters arrived. 3 weeks after Velthor's announcement, the data package was enormous, containing centuries of galactic military doctrine, technological standards, and cultural frameworks. Earth's best minds gathered in Seoul to study it. Taeho was the youngest person in the room at 24 years old. Fresh from university, he had been recruited for his unconventional engineering approaches. While others read through the official documentation, he focused on something else, the metadata. The military trial hasn't changed in 300 years, Taeho announced during the first strategy session. They used the exact same scenario with the exact same variables. Every species gets identical conditions. Hyunwoo looked up from his tactical analysis. That seems inefficient. Why wouldn't they adapt the trial to each species' strengths and weaknesses? Because it's not really a test, Guwon said quietly. She had been thinking about this constantly. It's a filter. They want specific results, not creative solutions. Yuna, the diplomat assigned to manage alien relations, added her observations. I've been meeting with representatives from minor council species. The ones who barely passed the trials. They all described the same thing. Extreme pressure to conform to existing galactic standards. Species that try to innovate or suggest alternatives are labeled as disruptive. Mina pulled up her linguistic analysis on the main screen. The language in the trial documentation uses what we call limiting vocabulary. It's designed to constrain how you think about problems. When you read these instructions, your brain automatically starts thinking in their framework. Hyunwoo studied the military scenario. It described a standard space conflict, two fleets meeting in open space. With clearly defined objectives and rules of engagement, every weapon, ship type, and tactical option was precisely specified. "This is like ancient warfare," he muttered. "Linear, predictable, almost ceremonial, because that's what galactic warfare became," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Kathon standing in the doorway. The Mirathi researcher looked uncomfortable. "I shouldn't be here." But after talking with Juan, I started reviewing historical records. War among council species is heavily regulated. There are rules, protocols, limitations. Battles are more like chess matches than actual conflicts. "Why?" Hyun-woo asked. Control Cthulhu replied simply. "The Council's founding species ensure that no one can challenge them militarily. They've made war so structured that innovation is impossible. Any species that tries to fight differently is condemned as barbaric and sanctioned." Taiho leaned back in his chair, a grin spreading across his face. "So they've forgotten how to actually fight." "That's dangerous thinking," Yuna warned. "We're trying to join their civilization, not antagonize them, are we?" Jiwon challenged. "Think about what we've learned. They treat us like children. Their trials are designed for us to fail or barely succeed. Species that show too much innovation disappear from records. Is that a civilization we want to join on their terms?" The room fell silent. Finally, Hyun-woo spoke. "Let me see if I understand. They expect us to study their military doctrine, use their approved tactics, and execute their scenario by their rules. And if we do that, we'll either fail because we're not experienced enough, or barely pass and be considered subordinate forever." "That's the pattern," Mina confirmed. "Then we don't play their game," Hyun-woo decided. "We play ours." Over the next month, Earth's preparation took an unusual direction. Instead of studying galactic military history, Hyun-woo had his team analyze human warfare. Not the clean, modern conflicts, but the messy, creative, desperate wars throughout human history. Guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, asymmetric strategies, and deception. Taiho approached the technology challenge with similar irreverence. The problem was presented as unsolvable. Create a device that could generate energy from quantum fluctuations while maintaining stable output across varying gravitational fields. According to galactic science, this violated fundamental principles. "It does violate their principles," Taiho explained to his engineering team. "But their principles are based on assumptions we don't share. Look at this." He pulled up equations on the screen. "They assume quantum fluctuations are purely random. We've proven they're not. They assume gravitational fields are continuous. Our models show they're quantized at certain scales. Their impossible problem is only impossible if you accept their framework." Sora, the cultural anthropologist, had perhaps the most disturbing findings. She studied the third trial, which required humanity to resolve a complex moral dilemma involving multiple alien species with conflicting needs. Every previous solution that passed the trial reached the same conclusion. Sora reported, "Defer to council authority and maintain existing power structures." Solutions that suggested systemic change or challenged council wisdom were marked as failures, even if they were more ethical by any objective standard. "So the cultural wisdom trial is really a loyalty test," Yuna said. "They don't want wisdom. They want obedience." As the 6-month preparation period neared its end, Kathan made increasingly frequent visits to the human facility. She brought data that couldn't be found in official records, stories of species that had been too innovative, too independent, too questioning. Most had been quarantined indefinitely. A few had simply vanished. "There's a faction within the council that fears change more than anything," Kathan confided to Juwan during a late-night meeting. "They've maintained power for thousands of years by ensuring no one can challenge them. Your species is young and doesn't understand the danger you're in. If you fail these trials, they might decide humanity is too risky to leave alone. And if we pass by their rules, we become part of their stagnant system," Juwan replied. "I don't see a third option." Giwan smiled. "That's because you've been part of their system your whole life. You can't see outside it. But we can. We're not constrained by what the galaxy thinks is possible. The week before the first trial, Velthar visited the human facility for a final inspection. He walked through their preparations with barely concealed amusement. "You've been studying human military history?" he observed, looking at the displays on the walls. "Primitive warfare won't help you in space combat. We're learning from all available sources." Hyunwoo replied diplomatically. Velthor picked up a tablet showing analysis of something called the Art of War. "This is ancient human philosophy. How quaint. The galaxy has moved beyond such crude thinking. Modern warfare is civilized, regulated, predictable. You'll understand when you face the scenario." After he left, Taiho turned to Hyunwoo. "He has no idea what's coming, does he?" "None of them do," Hyunwoo confirmed. "They've been playing the same game for so long, they've forgotten other games exist. They think they know what humanity is because they've categorized us according to their framework. Primitive technology, advanced theory, emotional, and irrational. But they miss something," Giwan added. "They miss that every limitation they see in us is actually a different perspective. We don't think like them because we haven't been conditioned by their rules. We haven't learned what's impossible." Yuna looked worried. "This could go very wrong. If we offend them too badly, they might decide we're a threat." "We're already a threat," Mina said. "We just don't look like one yet. The question is whether we reveal that threat in a controlled way that forces them to accept us as equals, or hide it and accept a subordinate position forever. Or we could compromise," Yuna suggested. "Pass the trials their way, gain membership, then work for change from inside." Sora shook her head. "I've studied their cultural psychology. They don't allow internal reform. Every species that tried was gradually marginalized until they either conformed or left. The system protects itself." The night before the first trial, the human team gathered one final time. They had made their decision. They would face the trial as humans, not as poor copies of galactic citizens. They would use strategies the Council had never seen. They would solve problems the Council thought impossible. And they would demonstrate that humanity's different perspective was an asset, not a liability. "There's no going back after tomorrow," Hyunwoo warned. "Once we show them what we can do, everything changes." "Everything's already changing," Juan replied. "We changed it the moment we sent that first signal into space. We just didn't know it yet." As they left the facility, Kathan caught Jiwon's arm. "I hope you know what you're doing. The Council doesn't react well to surprises." Guan smiled. "Then they're going to have a very difficult time with humanity." The trial began aboard a massive Council observation ship. Representatives from 40 different species filled the viewing gallery, all eager to watch the primitive humans fail. Velthar sat in the center position, his four eyes gleaming with anticipation. The military scenario was projected in holographic space. Two fleets equal in number and capability would meet in battle. The human fleet would face an enemy using standard Council tactics. Victory required destroying the opposing fleet or forcing surrender through superior strategy. The rules were clear, the parameters fixed, the outcome predictable. Hyunwoo stood at the human command console with two other military strategists. The simulation would use their actual decisions in real time. Testing their ability to command under pressure, "Begin," Velthar announced. The enemy fleet appeared on sensors. Arranged in the classic Council formation, heavy ships in the center. Light ships on the flanks support vessels in the rear. Textbook positioning. They advanced at standard engagement speed toward the designated combat zone. Hyunwoo's first order shocked the observers. All ships, full retreat. Maximum speed away from enemy fleet. Confused murmurs filled the gallery. Velthar's translator crackled. "Is there a malfunction? Why are the humans fleeing?" "No malfunction," Hyunwoo replied calmly. "We're executing our strategy," the enemy fleet pursued, as programmed. But Hyunwoo kept his fleet at maximum distance, never entering weapons range. Hours passed in the simulation. The enemy continued pursuing, burning fuel, maintaining formation. "This is ridiculous," one observer complained. "They're not fighting." The trial requires us to defeat the enemy fleet, Hyunwoo said. It doesn't specify how. More hours passed. The enemy fleet's fuel reserves began depleting. Hyunwoo finally gave new orders. Break formation. Individual ships scatter in all directions. Random evasion patterns. The organized enemy fleet tried to follow, but couldn't match the chaotic movement. Some enemy ships broke formation to pursue individual human vessels. Others maintained position, waiting orders that assumed rational behavior. Hyunwoo waited until the enemy formation was completely broken. Ships scattered across vast distances. Then he struck. All ships, target the isolated support vessels. Hit and run. Don't engage the heavy ships. Human ships appeared from unexpected angles, destroyed vulnerable support vessels, and vanished before the heavy ships could respond. The enemy tried to regroup, but Hyunwoo kept them off balance. He never fought fair, never engaged in the honorable battle they expected. He picked off weak targets, avoided strong ones, and used the enemy's own doctrine against them. The simulation ended with the enemy fleet in disarray. Unable to coordinate, their support vessels destroyed, and their heavy ships sitting useless without logistic support. Technical victory to humanity without losing a single ship. The viewing gallery was silent. Velthor's four eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of confusion in his species. The scenario was not designed for this approach. The scenario didn't forbid it either, Hyunwoo replied. You gave us the rules. We followed them. We won. You ran away. You avoided honorable combat. This is not how warfare is conducted. It's how human warfare is conducted. You said this trial tested military strategy. We used military strategy, just not yours. The council representatives erupted in debate. Some called the human approach cheating. Others argued it was technically valid. A few looked genuinely disturbed that their 300-year-old scenario could be beaten so easily. Kathan caught Yuan's eye from across the gallery and made a gesture. That might have been approval or warning. Possibly both. The technology trial was scheduled for 2 days later. Velthor made it clear he expected humanity to fail this one. Military strategy can be luck, he announced. But technology requires true understanding. The challenge we present requires mastery of principles that took most species centuries to grasp. Taiho stepped up to the engineering station with his team. The problem appeared on screens. Create a device meeting seemingly impossible specifications. The quantum fluctuation energy generator with stable output across varying gravity fields, while other team members began working through calculations. Taiho did something unexpected. He started dismantling the testing equipment provided by the council. What are you doing? Demanded a council engineer. That equipment is necessary for measurement. Your equipment assumes certain things about physics, Taiho explained, pulling out components. We need to test our solution using our framework, not yours. He rebuilt the testing apparatus using different principles. Then he presented the human solution. The device was smaller than expected, simpler in design, and looked nothing like what galactic engineers would create. This cannot possibly work, Velthor stated. It violates the candor principle. The candor principle assumes quantum fluctuations are purely random, Taiho replied. Our research shows they follow patterns when observed through temporal correlation. Your mathematics miss this because you average the fluctuations over time. We work with them in real time. He activated the device. It hummed quietly, generating stable power output. A council scientist checked the readings and rechecked them. This shouldn't be possible. Doyen, the mathematician, stepped forward. May I present something? He projected equations into the holographic space. We've been analyzing galactic mathematical frameworks. They're based on axioms established thousands of years ago. Several of these axioms are actually unprovable assumptions, not fundamental laws. He walked through the proof, showing where galactic mathematics made logical leaps that seemed reasonable but weren't necessarily true. The candor principle is derived from these assumptions. If you reject the assumptions and build mathematics from different axioms, the principle doesn't hold. The universe doesn't care about our axioms. It follows its own rules. The council scientists watched in growing alarm as Do-Yan casually dismantled principles they had treated as absolute truth. One elderly researcher from a species called the Thalmorians actually stood up and left the room, unable to process what he was seeing. "This is heresy," Velthar declared. "You cannot simply reject established science." "We're not rejecting it," Guan interjected. "We're showing that it's incomplete. Your science works within the framework you established. But there are other frameworks, other ways of understanding reality. You've been using one tool for so long, you forgot other tools exist." Sora presented humanity's approach to the cultural wisdom trial the next week. The moral dilemma involved a dispute between 4 alien species over resource rights in a shared system. The standard solution, which every passing species chose, involved deferring to council arbitration and accepting their division of resources based on seniority in the council. Sora proposed something different. "The problem assumes resources are limited and must be divided," she explained. "But what if we change the parameters? According to our analysis, the conflict exists because each species is using outdated extraction technology. With more efficient methods, there's enough for everyone." She presented a detailed plan for technological cooperation, shared infrastructure, and joint development that would benefit all 4 species more than fighting over scraps. "This goes beyond the trial parameters," Velthar objected. "The trial asks us to resolve the conflict," Sora replied. "This resolves it. Just not the way you expected. You're supposed to choose which species has the most valid claim. Why? That just creates winners and losers? Our solution creates only winners. Isn't that wiser?" Sora then presented her deeper analysis. "We've studied the Council's cultural frameworks. You're organized around hierarchy, precedents, and historical claims. This creates stability, but prevents growth. When every dispute is resolved by reinforcing existing power structures, you ensure nothing ever really changes. You mistake stagnation for peace." She showed data on galactic innovation rates, scientific advancement, and cultural development. All had been declining for centuries. "You're not a thriving civilization. You're a dying one. You just die very slowly and don't notice." The viewing gallery erupted. Some species were outraged. Others looked uncomfortable, as if Sora had spoken a truth they'd been avoiding. A few representatives from minor species were nodding thoughtfully. Velthor stood, his robes flashing angry colors. "You have failed to understand the trial. You were supposed to demonstrate wisdom by accepting the natural order of things." "Natural order?" Sora replied calmly. "There's nothing natural about your order. It's artificial, constructed, maintained through trials exactly like this one. You test species not on their wisdom, but on their willingness to submit to your system. That's not a measure of capability. It's a measure of obedience. This is outrageous. The Council will not tolerate such disrespect." Hyunwoo stood up. "Then don't tolerate it. Reject us. Quarantine Earth. But know that we've demonstrated something important here. We've shown that your trials can be beaten by thinking differently. We've proven that your scientific principles aren't as absolute as you claim. And we've exposed that your cultural framework prioritizes control over actual wisdom." He looked around the gallery. "Other species are watching this. They're seeing what we saw. They're starting to ask questions you don't want them asking. Whether you accept humanity or not, the damage is done. The galaxy just learned that the Council's way isn't the only way." Kathan spoke up from her position, her voice shaking slightly. "I formally request a full Council vote on humanity's admission. This matter is too significant for sector authority alone." Other voices joined her. Not many, but enough. Representatives from species who had long chafed under Council restrictions, who had been waiting for someone to challenge the system. Velthar looked around, his 4 eyes wide. For the first time since arriving at Earth, he appeared uncertain. "This is most irregular. So is humanity," Kathan replied. "Perhaps that's exactly what the galaxy needs." The Council vote was scheduled for 3 weeks. During that time, Earth's facility became the center of unexpected activity. Representatives from minor species arrived quietly, asking questions about human methods and perspectives. Not officially, never officially, but with growing frequency. Una managed these delicate conversations, building relationships with species who had never been important enough to speak directly with council leadership. She discovered a pattern. Many of these species had their own innovative ideas, but had learned to keep them hidden. Suggesting alternatives to council doctrine was career-ending at best, dangerous at worst. "We're not the first to question the system," Una reported to the team. "We're just the first to do it openly and survive." So far, that last part worried everyone. Yunji, the intelligence operative assigned to monitor alien communications, had been intercepting increasingly concerning signals. She called an emergency meeting in the most secure room they had. "There's a problem," Yanji announced, displaying encrypted communications she'd decoded. "A faction within the council is preparing a military response. They're not waiting for the vote. There's a fleet being assembled in secret, 3 systems away. The official designation is quarantine enforcement, but the force composition is wrong for containment. This is an elimination fleet." The room went cold. Hunwoo studied the data. "How long until they're ready?" 10 days, maybe 12. "They're moving ships quietly, trying not to attract attention." "Who's behind it?" Giwan asked. "The Korean Empire, primarily Velthor-S people, but they have support from 2 other founding species. The communications mention that humanity represents an existential threat to galactic stability. They're arguing that letting us continue will encourage other species to reject council authority." Mina looked stricken. "They're going to destroy Earth? We have billions of people." "They'll call it quarantine," Yunji explained. "Target our industrial capacity, communication systems, maybe our space infrastructure. Leave us alive but unable to advance or communicate with other species. At least that's the public plan. Some of these communications suggest more extreme options if we resist." June, the historian, had been researching in the Council's public archives since the trials ended. He'd been looking for the species that disappeared from records. "I found something," he said, projecting his findings. 17 species in the last 1,000 years showed this same pattern. Initial contact, failed trials or challenges to council authority, then quarantine status. But here's the thing, none of them ever recovered. Quarantine is supposed to be temporary until a species develops properly. But these species just vanish from all records after a few decades. They're eliminated quietly, Sora concluded. Quarantine is just a polite word for erasure. Kathan had been attending these meetings despite the risk to herself. "I've been accessing restricted archives," she admitted. "Using my research credentials. There are files even most council members don't see. The founding species have maintained power for 12,000 years. They do it by ensuring no species ever becomes technologically or philosophically advanced enough to challenge them. The trials, the quarantines, the whole system is designed to filter out independent thinking." She looked haunted. "I've been part of this system my whole life. I believed it was for stability, for peace. But it's not. It's for control. And anyone who threatens that control disappears." "Why are you helping us?" Hyunwoo asked. "You're risking everything. Because in 3 years of research, I've learned more from humanity than in 20 years in the council system. You see possibilities we've been conditioned to ignore. If you're eliminated, that perspective dies with you. The galaxy can't afford that loss." The team spent the next days in intense planning. They couldn't fight the council fleet directly. Earth's military technology was decades behind galactic standards in conventional terms. But they had advantages the council didn't expect. "We need allies," Una insisted. "Real allies, not just sympathetic observers." "I can arrange something," Kathan offered. "There's a network of reform-minded species. We've never been organized because organizing was too dangerous. But your trials changed things. People are talking openly now about problems they only whispered about before." She contacted someone named Corvel, a leader among the marginalized species. He arrived at Earth's facility 2 days later, traveling in an unmarked ship. Corvel belonged to a species called the Vrin, who had been powerful once, but were slowly pushed to the edges of council influence. Your species has done what we dreamed about for generations, Corval told the human team. You've exposed the Council's weakness. Their power rests on the assumption that their way is the only way. You've proven that assumption false. Can you help us survive the next 2 weeks? Hyunwoo asked bluntly. I can offer support from 37 species who are ready to stand with you. Not much individually, but together we represent a significant political bloc. More importantly, we represent proof that you're not alone in questioning the Council. Will that stop the elimination fleet? Yunji asked. Corval looked grim. No, the founding species are afraid. Afraid species do terrible things, but it might make them think twice about doing it openly. Political pressure won't stop them, but it might slow them down, buy you time. Guan had been thinking about a different approach. What if we expose what they're doing? Show everyone the truth about the quarantines, the disappeared species, the whole corrupt system? The Council controls all major communication networks, Mina pointed out. They'd block any broadcast we tried. Not our communication network, Gi-wan replied, smiling. Our quantum communication system works differently. It doesn't route through any of their infrastructure. We built it independently. They can't block what they can't control. Taiho caught on immediately. We could broadcast directly to every species in the galaxy. Bypass all their censorship. Send the evidence everywhere at once. That would be an act of war, Yuna warned. They'd have justification to retaliate. They're already planning to retaliate, Hyunwoo said. The question is whether we go quietly or make enough noise that the galaxy pays attention. Mina began preparing the broadcast. June compiled all the evidence about disappeared species, false quarantines, and systematic suppression of innovation. Yonji provided the intercepted communications showing the elimination fleet. Sora crafted the message in multiple languages, designed to be clear and impossible to misinterpret. We're not just exposing the Council, Sora explained. We're offering an alternative. A vision of what galactic civilization could be if it valued innovation over stability, cooperation over hierarchy, growth over control. For days before the fleet would arrive at Earth, they were ready. Cathan warned them one last time. Once you do this, there's no going back. You'll make permanent enemies of the most powerful species in the galaxy. We already have, Ji-won replied. At least this way, everyone will know why. They transmitted the broadcast using every quantum communication array Earth had built. The signal went out in all directions simultaneously, faster than light, impossible to intercept or block. Within hours, every species in the galaxy with even basic receiver technology would have access to the truth. The message was simple. Humanity presented evidence of Council corruption, called for reform, and invited other species to join in creating a new galactic community based on mutual respect and shared innovation. They attached all the research, all the historical evidence, all the intercepted communications, and they included Taiho's technical specifications for building quantum communication systems. They gave away humanity's greatest advantage freely, ensuring that other species could communicate independently of Council networks. You're insane, Cathan said, but she was smiling. You're giving away the one thing that made you special. We're not special because of the technology, Guan explained. We're special because of how we think. And that can't be taken away or copied. But if other species can communicate freely, without Council censorship, they can start thinking differently too. That's worth more than any technological advantage. The galaxy's response was immediate and chaotic. Some species praised humanity's courage. Others condemned the breach of protocol. Many simply began asking questions they'd never dared ask before. The Council's communication networks lit up with debates, arguments, and demands for explanations. Velthar sent a furious message to Earth. You have violated every principle of diplomatic conduct. You have sown chaos across civilized space. The Council will respond with appropriate force. We've sown truth, Hyunwoo replied calmly. If truth causes chaos in your system, maybe your system needed chaos. The elimination fleet changed course, now approaching Earth openly rather than secretly. But something else happened too. Ships began leaving the fleet. Not many at first, but a few. Crews who didn't want to be part of an attack on a species that had only spoken truth. More ships appeared near Earth, sent by Corvell's alliance, not to fight but to witness, to ensure whatever happened next would be seen by everyone. They can't attack us quietly now, Yunji observed. Too many witnesses. Too much attention. If they eliminate Earth, they do it in front of the entire galaxy. Will that stop them? Mina asked. I don't know, Hanwoo admitted, but it changes the calculation. They wanted to quietly remove a threat. Now they'd be openly massacring a species for telling the truth. That's a much harder thing to justify. The fleet arrived in 3 days. Humanity prepared for whatever came next. The Council fleet emerged from faster than light. Travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 47 warships, enough firepower to glass a planet. They held position beyond Mars' orbit, clear threat visible to every telescope and sensor on Earth. Admiral Ranthis commanded the fleet. She was Thalmorian, a species known for careful thinking. Unlike Velthar, she showed no pleasure in this situation. Her communication to Earth was formal and cold. By order of the Galactic Council Security Directorate, Earth is hereby quarantined. You will power down all faster-than-light communication systems and submit to inspection. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. Hyunwoo stood in Earth's command center, surrounded by military leaders from every nation. They had prepared for this moment. Admiral, we respectfully decline. That is not an option. Power down your systems within 1 hour, or we will destroy them from orbit. Admiral, before you proceed, there's something you should see. Taiho activated a new display. All across Earth's solar system, small objects began appearing on sensors. Hundreds of them. They looked like satellites but moved with purpose, taking up positions in a sphere around the planet. What are those? Ranthis demanded. Defensive systems, Hyunwoo explained. We've been building them since we first detected your fleet assembling. They're based on our unique approach to physics. Each unit generates a localized quantum field disruption. Your weapons rely on focused energy beams and kinetic projectiles. Our field disrupts targeting systems and disperses energy weapons. We can't stop your entire fleet, but we can make attacking Earth very costly. It was mostly a bluff. The satellites existed but weren't as effective as Hyunwoo implied. However, the Council didn't know that. They only knew that humanity kept surprising them with impossible technology. Ranthis was silent for a long moment. You would fight? Against 47 warships with technology centuries beyond yours,